So this is on, right? You can hear me? Okay, so before we start, I have a question for you guys. So I'm an old school DBA. I've been doing IT. My first paid job in IT was in 1989, hence the gray hair. Let's go back here. And I use SQL Server since, let's switch that on. Yeah, that would perfect. A little bit. And I've been using SQL Server since around 1994, 95. Yeah? A database administrator. So here's the thing, if you have SQL Server somewhere, you need to make sure that you have a backup if it fails. And a lot of companies have a bunch of Hyper-V servers. Yeah. Yeah, basically, yeah. And also, the weird part is with SQL Server, it's a byproduct of something. SQL Server is never a solution, an end solution. There's no such thing. We bought a SQL Server today. This is what we have. No, it's always something that sits in the back of an application, or some programmers could develop against the database, or you can have an application like your SCOM would have a database in the back end, and it's a bit weird to manage because databases like SQL Server, because they're a byproduct, because they are being used for all kinds of solutions, there's no one good way to manage this. There is no simple switch on the backup and you're done. And I see many companies just use backup tools that back up everything, their Hyper-Vs, their Windows servers, and take the SQL servers as well. And that works well if you have small ones. If you have big ones or busy ones, it can go really wrong. I've seen that a few times. So here's a question for you guys. Who has snapshot-based backup software like VM and DPM and that kind of stuff? Okay, most of you. Who uses it to back up SQL servers? Have an agent or something there? Okay. I don't want to scare you, but stop doing that. Is this being recorded? Oops. No, it'll probably be okay, but here's what you can run into. If you're using that kind of software, and I haven't even started my presentation yet, but I ran into this 3 or 4 times already this year, where and it doesn't matter if you use DPM, VM, any backup tool that uses volume-based snapshot, the VSS stuff, where it takes a snapshot of your system and backs up the drives. It freezes the I/O to the disk and then grabs everything. For SQL Server, if you have a few and you just have your backend software running on it and the SQL Server is not very busy, fine. It freezes the I/O. The I/O continues while you're making the backup, but Windows saves it somewhere else. It has a file where it saves it, and when you're done, it just swaps it out and you're good. SQL Server has stuff that you could do at night, like rebuilding indexes, or run a CheckDB, or you have busy processes for your SQL Server that runs a whole lot of data through the system. If you have nightly stuff that takes all your data and puts it in a data warehouse or something, that can make the system so busy that Windows cannot keep up. The file will be full, or it just cannot keep up with the I/O while you're making this backup. And I've seen it, like I said, 3 times already this year, where you will see you can see this in the event log. If you see a vol/snap error 25, that means your database is broken, dead, you have to restore from backup. You just killed it. 3 times already this year. Databases that would just, SQL Server is doing stuff, and then Windows says, I cannot keep up. I will put all the data back from before the snapshot. Whatever changes you just made, I'm going to throw this away. Sorry. Vol/snap error 25. Corrupt database a second later. And you cannot recover from that. You have to restore from backup. This, in most companies, means you lost a full day of work, right? I've seen this many times where you talk to the boss and you go, okay, How much, this is called RTO and RPO, recovery time objective and recovery point objective. Now, recovery time objective means if my database goes down now, how much time do I have before it needs to be back up and running? Can I go to the store, buy a new computer, install Windows, put SQL Server on? That'll be a day. And recovery point is, if it breaks now and I restore it from backup, how much time do we go back? Right? Is this last week or yesterday or an hour ago? What can we do? And the boss will always say, you have a second to get it back up, and I don't want to lose any data. Right? That's the boss's first response. Then you go, okay, we need 2 systems with mirroring, or we need Enterprise Edition. These days you can buy 18 cores, 20 cores, 22 cores even. SQL Server Enterprise Edition is about $8,000 per core. You need 2 of them, so that's a couple of $100,000 in SQL Server licenses. And you need some Fusion IO cards or something in the middle. So you go back to the boss and you say, okay, your 1 second and nothing is $500,000. Okay. Maybe we want something different. And then they usually say, hey, a day is fine, just the backup from last night. And if you back up in an hour, it's probably fine. And this is fine for most companies, and for a lot of companies also, until it happens once, right? You restore from yesterday, and the boss goes, we have to do all the work from the whole day again? That's not possible, we can't have this. Well, you said yesterday was fine. So that's the thing I run into a lot. The best example I had for this was a factory in Holland. Slaughterhouse. Cows come in the front, schnitzels come out the back. I explained this in German. So what they had was recovery time objective. So how much time can you be down? Very specific. If the database goes down, they cannot process any meat. Because if they find a problem in the supermarket somewhere with some piece of meat, they'll have to scan the barcode and find it all the way back to the cow and the family of the cow it came from. There's a very strict rules for that. So they cannot process anything. So they said if the thing goes down, we cannot process anything. Trucks will line up in the parking lot, then in the on the road towards the gate, then out the gate on the road. And the building has this thing sticking out. That's the office of the boss. And after about an hour, he will see trucks. And then he's going to call, what the heck is going on? So an hour was their thing, because the boss can see the trucks after an hour. You're laughing. This was serious. This is what they said. This is what. So their recovery point objective was a bit more serious. They figured this out because it happened to them already. Database breaks, they have to restore, and they have food and unprocessed stuff in the whole factory. There's a whole line of things, half cows, dead cows, alive cows, complete schnitzels in the back. They have stuff, and they don't know where it is because you just lost the database. The whole process is gone. When this happens for about a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4, maybe 5, they can go in the factory with everybody and start scanning, start typing it in, start seeing, okay, is this there? No, it's not there. Let's enter this again. Where did this come from? And they can go and retrace their steps the whole way through for about 5 minutes. They had one where it took more than 15 minutes. It was so much work that would never, ever be done correctly. They were not allowed to do it, and they had to throw away all of the meat in the entire factory. This is a company with €1 billion revenue a year. I'm not kidding, €1 billion. Not in the one factory, they have many factories, but this is serious business for them. So now they've said, recovery time is still an hour, because they had to put something, and recovery point, less than 15 minutes, preferably nothing at all, because it's a nightmare to fix that. So and this is how you set up your systems. Now, this is when SQL Server is the most important thing in your company, and everything depends on it. There's also companies that have a lot of back office stuff, and that needs a SQL Server in the back. Most of you might even have a SQL Server that you didn't even know you had, because software packages install SQL Server, like the free versions and whatnot. And then I've been in situations where there was a patch, but we're patched, we're good. Yeah, no, you forgot that one and that one and that one. Oh, where did that come from, right? Happens a lot. So you can run these tools from Microsoft where you can scan for SQL servers. I was in a company where they said we have 5 SQL servers. I run the tool that scans the thing, 17 SQL servers come out. I had one where they accidentally installed Enterprise Edition on all their servers because that's what they downloaded from MSDN. Right? You can either pay $1.5 million to Microsoft or uninstall these things. Okay, give us a week. This is serious. This happens. This is part of my work, funny enough. So let's go through some slides. I won't bore you too much with the slides, but these are the sponsors. They're all down there. Say hi to them. They have cool stuff, especially if you meet an English/German guy named William Durkin. He runs the user group here. If you want to learn more about SQL Server, he runs a SQL Server user group in this building every last Thursday of the month, I think. Every year we have a barbecue, a SQL Grillen, we call this. He calls it. It's pretty cool. So say hello to him. He's lived here for over 10 years, so he speaks way better German than I do. And he's become a German now because England voted for this weird thing, the Brexit. He thought, I better become a German as well before they make me leave or something. Now, I told you about me already. This is me. If you have any questions, or what was this tool you were talking about? Just ping me, send me an email, or ping me on Twitter or whatever. Find me. I'll be here for a bit more. Just find me, and we can swap the data or something. I'm on Twitter, André Kamman, or send me an email at andrekamman@cloud-dba.eu. If I don't respond quickly, send it again. I get a lot of email, but I will answer. It's not that I don't like you. I'm just horrible with sending emails. Now, how am I doing? Good. I have the tendency to talk for hours, even on a 45-minute talk. First thing, this has actually already become the second thing I want to talk to you about. Backups for SQL Server, we mentioned it already with the DPM and the VM. I don't want to diss any of these tools, they do a good job, but be careful with your SQL servers. If your SQL servers are not busy, it's totally fine. If you have really busy SQL servers, some of them process indexes at night, if you do a rebuild index and you do the backup at the same time, be careful. What I see a lot, especially in virtualized environments, you do the VM or the DPM backups of everything but the SQL Server data and log drives in the TempDB. You make normal backups with SQL Server. That means you get a backup file from your database to a file server, and then you back up that file server. That's the most common thing that I see. Gives you a lot more flexibility, and there are really good backup tools that do normal standard backups for SQL Server, so create backup files, you don't have to type in the backup command inside SQL Server. There's many scripts for that. So one of the scripts that I want to talk about is this one. Have you guys heard of Ola Hallengren? One guy, okay. Here's a guy in the back I recognize from last week. You should have heard of it as well. So, Ola in the 90s, early 2000s, every DBA that had to manage many databases, large corporations like banks have thousands and thousands of databases and sometimes even thousands of SQL servers. And they have a group of DBAs that are there 24/7, and they don't trust whatever comes off the internet, especially in the early days. Backup script? No, we will make one ourselves because that's a lot better than what comes off the internet. So everybody in this business like me has written their own backup scripts. We don't do that anymore. This guy, Ola Hallengren, this is where you go, has written the best backup scripts ever. and the easiest to use, and it uses all the smart defaults. It is for everyone who wants to just simply, I don't know about this SQL Server thing, I know I have to back it up, and I want something really simple. There's something built in a SQL Server called a maintenance plan, where you go through a wizard. These things are horrible. Yeah, the wizard works in such a way that if you just click through it, if you do next, finish, you're making backups of your database, of your transaction log, you rebuild the index, you do everything at once at midnight. It always does everything. It doesn't know, this table is not very fragmented, I don't have to rebuild this thing, let's skip this one. Doesn't know about these things, just does everything. So if you do that and you just want everything, fine, it will work. Problem is, when you have a database that you don't want to have backed up every day because it's a terabyte in size, for instance, these things do exist, and you want to make an exception. So you deselect that database. From now on, you're backing up a selection of databases. If a new database is added to this SQL Server, doesn't get backed up. And you don't get a warning that you don't have a backup. You will find this out when it's time to restore because the server crashed. Right? Now, all our scripts don't do that. What you do is you go to ola.hallengren.com, you download maintenancesolution.sql, and you just run it on your SQL Server. You start Management Studio, you connect, you put the query in there, you press F5, that's it. Oh, not completely. It's a good thing I can see the next slide here. I forgot something. There's a couple of things that you need to change. I don't know if you can see this, but it says backup directory, C backup. Well, don't store anything on your C drive. But yeah, best thing to do, file server. Put a UNC path in there, have a root of something, and all our scripts will figure out a nice naming convention for you. It will, if you do file server / SQL backup, it will create server name, database name, backup type, full, simple, full, log, or differential. And then a database file itself will also have database name, and then type, and then date, and time, dot, back, or something. It will make a nice naming convention for you. So all your backups will be in one place. Then you just point your DPM or whatever you use at that file server, and you're done. The other one that you want to change, cleanup time. It says null. That means don't bother. Don't clean up anything. Just let this thing grow for years. If you have databases that are 10 megabyte in size, you won't notice it. I have databases that I manage that are 15 terabytes in size. The cleanup time is 1 day. Once you're done, throw away the one from yesterday because we have 50 terabytes in space and only 2 will fit, right? You have to manage these things a bit. Then all you need to do is run the script, and what it will do, if you've ever seen this in SQL Server, there's an agent in there, a scheduling mechanism. It comes with its own. Does that mean you can't schedule anything in a task manager? Of course not, you can do that. But SQL Server has its own scheduler, pretty easy to use mechanism. And that's in the SQL Server agent. That's where it will have created these jobs. Now, they won't start running. There is no schedule attached to the jobs. So you can just grab the script, put the cleanup time and the backup directory in, hit F5, and you have all these jobs, but there's nothing running right now. You're fine, you don't have to be worried about that. They don't have schedules. So what you do is you pick the ones that you like. What you should do at least is system database is full and user database is full. You want a full backup. But some companies like every Sunday a full and every weekday a differential. Some companies like every day a full backup. You just pick the ones you like and you schedule them. And you give them the schedule that you like. Now, do you need log backups? Is this something that you need to switch on? I don't know if you've ever seen, in SQL Server you can take a database and you have full and simple mode. I don't know if you've seen this. Now full and simple mode means that every database has a transaction log, this log file, and every time an application does something in SQL Server, it doesn't get written to the database. It writes it to the log. And every now and then it grabs everything from the log and modifies the database so it's in the right place. And then when it's done, it takes everything from the log that it's already processed and throws it away. This is to make the system faster. If you have a table of last names and you stick in a last name in the middle, it doesn't have to put the thing in the middle, it just writes it in the log. I've added a user with this last name. And then some process after a minute comes along and processes it in the database. Now this log can grow pretty big, and sometimes you see that the database is on full. And full means once I'm done processing everything with the log, don't throw it away. Just keep it there until I made a backup of this log. Now this backup of this log, this is what makes your database available for a restore until the last second. Because you need a last full backup and every backup of the log until now. So you do a full backup every night and then a log backup every hour or every 15 minutes. And you keep all these files. And then you can restore all the way down to the last second that you've lost your database. This is how you make sure you don't lose any data. If you have a cluster, you need to switch that on as well. Sometimes I see logs that are way bigger than the database itself. That's because you've put it on full and have not made any log backups. So it will never ever throw away anything. And the log just keeps on growing and growing. And you run out of disk space. And you go, oh, what do we do now? You have to make an extra log file, and it becomes, and then you call somebody, and he does some thing in 1 minute and sends you a bill for it. Here you go, fixed it for you. Now, how is this information useful for Ola Hallengren stuff? Ola knows how to do this. He has, you just schedule the log backups, and Ola figures out which databases actually need a log backup. He just, oh, this one is in full, log backup. Also, if you have it in full and you want to make log backups, you need to start with a full backup, or else this chain of backups doesn't work. Ola's script knows this. It sees your log backup and goes, you didn't make a full. I'm going to wait until the full comes by, then start making log backups. Or, you can set this, there's an option in the script, if you look through it, you can actually set it to, if you run into a log backup but you haven't made a full yet, make a full backup instead of a log backup. So you don't have to wait until the full backup. I like having backups, so I usually set this on. Switch that on and you're fine. And there's some other ones here as well. Index optimize. Now, index optimize, people have been saying for centuries, not really, but you should always be very aggressive with reorganizing or rebuilding your indexes because they make your system faster. I hope there's none of my colleagues around because I'm going to tell you that I disagree. This is old school stuff. Rebuilding an index just means you have a table with everybody's last name, but if you stick in enough last names in the middle, it doesn't move everything if there's no space anymore. It has pages, those are 8 kilobyte blocks, and there's a bit of free space on it, so it can put a last name in there that needs to fit in the middle. But as soon as that's full, it does something called a page split, where it moves half the data to the end. It won't move all the data. It just takes the piece that doesn't fit in the end, makes space so you can stick that name in. If you do this for a while, your data is only logically sorted by last name, but physically it's not. If the database then does a scan through the table to find all the last names in order, it will go to the middle. You put in your own last name, which is in the middle. Then it goes to the middle and it goes, next page, oh wait, I had a split, it's over there. And then it has to go over there and then back and maybe back again because you had all these page splits. And the I/O is not sequential anymore. This was important when we had hard drives. Has anyone seen this at work? A real hard drive with the head moving and everything? You still have them?
Yes, I won't let on that.
The more and more we start using SSDs and these cards with like Fusion I/O and all these cards with super fast I/Os, the less important this becomes. This was important in the days where you wanted to prevent the head of the drive to move. This is why old school advice always says you have to put your transaction log on a separate disk. That was because it just writes, and the head doesn't have to move. It doesn't have to do this. So the seek time was important there, the move time of the head. Nobody cares about that anymore. So, yeah.
When you're talking about disks, I'm sorry, my name is Philip.
Uh-huh.
When you're talking about disks, I'm very interested in the alignment, strip size, and you're talking about the performance. Yeah. What is your meaning about that in a virtualized environment? Yeah, the 4K alignment, drive size.
Very cool question. I have only 20 minutes left. I'm sorry, we're going to have to talk about this when I'm done.
Okay.
But I'd love to talk to you about that. This can be quite confusing. Oh, what size do you use for how many disks here, and what do you use? I have an opinion about that. So rebuilding your indexes, I don't think it's that important anymore. But yes.
Would it also pages be re-merged or regrouped?
Yeah, that's.
So maybe you get a bit of free disk space at least, or so.
Indeed, if you rebuild your index, that's what this process does. The rebuild of the index just says, okay, this thing is completely fragmented. I'm going to take it and I'm going to write everything out again in the nice order that you need it. So the fragmentation goes away. That's what a rebuild index does. There's a lighter version, it's called a reorganize, and that will just go through the index and look for pages that are not in the right order and move them. And the reorganize doesn't lock the table on a standard edition SQL Server. It just works, and when you're done with it or it takes too long, you can stop it, you can kill it. A rebuild on a standard edition locks the table, does a rebuild, and if you cancel that, it will undo everything. So if it has run for an hour, it will run for at least half an hour after you press the cancel button. This is not nice if you do this during the day. Now, sometimes I advise my clients to stop rebuilding indexes because you have Fusion I/O cards or SSDs. They don't have heads. They don't care about latency. They're fast, so they don't care if the name is here or that they have to move there. It's fine. Not completely true, but let's go with that. And that works for a lot of clients for me, where they have stopped rebuilding indexes. But there's a but. A side effect of rebuilding indexes is that the statistics gets updated. And SQL Server uses statistics. Statistics is nothing more than, hey, if you put in my last name, come on, how many people are there with a K, right? Come on, how many are there? Well, it's not a German name, so probably not a lot. If you take another name, there's many of them, then SQL Server has statistics about this. It knows that if you want, if all your customers are in Germany and you query where country is Germany, then it knows I'm not going to go to the right spot in the index and find a few of them. I'm going to have a lot that I need. So I'm just going to start at the beginning, go all the way through the end, and this is called a scan of the table. Because it knows if more than 60% I need, I'm just going to do a scan instead of a seek. This is where we get a bit technical about tuning databases and how the optimizer works inside SQL Server, which is not important if you're an admin. But the statistics need to be correct, or else it will guess wrong, make the wrong idea about how to attack your data, get it as fast as possible, and your system will become slower. A lot of times when your index rebuilds don't work, your developers or users are going to start to complain that the system is slower. This is probably because of the statistics and not about the indexes. So if you stop optimizing indexes, make sure that you're updating the statistics. You can do that with Ola as well. Just schedule the update statistics every night or as often as you want, but that's the important part there. Now, I have a few more things to go through. This is as far as I want to go about backups. You can talk for a week about backups. If you want to catch me some more, I'll be here for a while. If you have a specific situation that you have questions for, I'm here. Let's get a coffee. Now, so this is the important part of Ola Hallengren script. It doesn't have a schedule, so just run it and then just pick and choose whatever you want to do. Just create a schedule that suits your needs. while you're creating the schedule and you have more systems, you can push on the script button and it will script it for you. You can save that. You don't have to go through the user interface anymore for all your other systems. Just run Ola script and then run your schedule script and it will create the same schedule. If you have dozens of machines, maybe you want to create a slightly different schedule. So not everything starts running at midnight, but that's up to you. Depends on how big your systems are. And these are the interesting defaults I talked about. It's a bit small, but it's the whether you should use compression, whether it's switched on or not, and whether you need if the log backup comes by and it can't because you need a full backup, whether it waits until midnight or whether it will make a full backup for you right away. I have lots of clients that say, no, make a full backup right away. Even though it's in the middle of the day, I don't care. Backups are more important than users. The users can complain all they want, I'm making backups. Now, it says demo. I'll do 2 demos at once. I'll do them right after this so I can go through the rest as well. Because there's some other stuff that I want to talk about. Here's one of the most important tools that I have in any SQL Server that I manage. If something doesn't work the way you want on a SQL Server, if users are complaining, the thing is slow. What does that mean, right? So you go in, and in the management studio, there's this monitor thing, so you can, especially as admins, we look at IOs, and we look at CPU and memory, but what is SQL Server doing? Now, there are a few commands that you can run built in, spwho and spwho2, and they give a lot of information, and you need to be half an expert to even figure out what that means. Now, somebody has written a stored procedure, a query, if you will. This is called sp_whoisactive. If you Google for this, you'll find this. It will create a stored procedure in your system, and from then on, you can just open a window and type sp_whoisactive. And it will just give you a simple list of who is running something at this moment. So all the users that are not doing anything is not in that list. It's just a list of people doing stuff, how long they've been doing that, and if they're blocking somebody and what they're waiting for. What is this system doing? Really simple answer. Run that. I'll show you in a sec. And then there is another one that I love to run on customer systems when I go there for the first time. Don't know if you've heard of this guy, but Brent Ozar has written a whole bunch of scripts actually, but there is one he calls SP Blitz, and it just gives you a list of things that might not be set correctly. What he thinks, okay, I normally don't see this, like min and max memory setting. You can set your SQL Server to use a max memory and a min memory. If you do just setup next, finish, the max memory is set to 2 terabytes. Who has 2 terabytes in their systems? Right, not many. So this means, and this is an important one, I've seen this so many times. You start running rebuild, and it usually happens with the rebuild index because then it has to read all the data at night, and it hits the memory limit. SQL Server does not give back memory. It loves memory. It just goes up, and it never gives it back. Not completely true because Hyper-V and VMware have something called a balloon driver, and the balloon driver just fakes a program that needs memory. It will just say, I need memory for some reason. I don't care. And it will call an API into Windows saying, I need memory every minute. And Windows will call out to all the other programs running on the system saying, hey, if you have memory, give it back. And SQL Server listens to this. So if you have a SQL Server that just goes up, down, kill that balloon driver, switch it off. Right? Just set a sensible maximum, because it will just, what happens if you give back the memory to the OS? Next time the query comes in, it has to come from disk again. So you're just hammering your disk system more if it can't keep it in memory. So kill the balloon driver and set a decent maximum. That helps. How much would the maximum be? Close to the end of the memory of that the Windows has? No. Well, give Windows space. SQL Server is really good in reusing memory, so give it space. There's a thing that you can do in SQL Server that is called lock pages in memory. That means if Windows panics and it needs to throw something in the swap file, it won't throw SQL Server memory in the swap file. This is a good thing. Every time SQL Server gets added to the swap file, the performance is dead. You can restart your server, it's not going to work anymore. I've had this, do I have time for another? Yeah, sure. I've had this at a bank, big SharePoint farm, 200 gigabyte backup size. I needed to copy this thing. So I remote desktop in, grab the file, move it across to the file server, and let go of the mouse button. What happens in Windows if you copy a large file? It reserves a bunch of memory. Too much memory, and Windows dumped the SQL Server database of the whole SharePoint farm of the whole bank in the Netherlands in the swap file. So now my response time goes from milliseconds to multi-seconds, right? And the whole SharePoint farm for the whole bank was dead. Manager behind me had to reboot the system. You have to fill out a form because that was a major outage because apparently there's important stuff in SharePoint, like all the party pictures of the company outings and whatnot. So I had to also figure out what happened and make sure it never happened again. So I figured out SQL Server was thrown in the swap file, so I do this lock pages in memory. This is a right that you can give it. If you Google for lock pages in memory, you can set it somewhere. Now, I didn't give it the right max memory. So reboot the system, memory goes up and up and up and up and up. I log in, grab the backup file because I hadn't had the chance to backup it yet. Grab the file, copy it across. Windows panics, grab SQL Server. Oh, no, can't throw that in the swap file. But there's nothing else. So what do you think it threw in the swap file or killed? It even started killing processes. What do you think it did? The TCP/IP subsystem. So SQL Server was running fine, but you couldn't connect to it, right? Be careful, give it a decent maximum. Give Windows space to breathe. That helps a lot in systems that are overloaded. SP Blitz will tell you about these things. It will just give you a list. Hey, listen, your max memory setting is higher than what you have in the server. Are you sure? I see a log file that's bigger than the database. Maybe you have it on full but haven't done a backup yet. And there's links to explanations on his website. So you just go through and you decide for yourself if you think this is useful, if you want to change it, or that you think, no, this is how my application works, this is fine. I don't care if it's not a default thing, it's fine. You can decide this for yourself. Start with SP Blitz. It's like a sanity check on your servers. Ooh, 7 minutes. All right. I'm going to show you this SP who is active. Yeah, let's do that. Let's show something. Now, I've got a SQL Server here, and I'm going to, if I run this now, who is active? It's nothing, because it's on my laptop. So I have this test database here called Wide World Importers. This is how stupid Americans are. They come up with a demo database called Wide World Importers. And I was preparing for this thing, and I seriously was thinking, WWI, should I call this? I just call it demo database. Maybe not World War I. You know. How do they come up with this? You think a marketing department at Microsoft in America would go, bad name. Anyhow. Let's go, where did I put that? I put that here, and I have my demo DB, and I have my workload drivers, and there is an order insert application. Let's start that. So this thing will just insert orders into my system. And you can see that here in my task manager. It's just a demo thing. So my CPUs on my little Surface Pro thingy are overloaded here. And now, SP who is active, if I press F5 on the right window, gives me information. And let me zoom in that a bit. Go on. Here we go. At some point in Management Studio, grabbing this middle thingy was Control B. You just put Control B and you had it. You can just move it up. Somebody removed that. I want to talk to that developer. Why? So it gives you a list of things that's running and only things that are running, so you can tell people what is wrong. And you also see wait info. Now the wait info, do I have 2 minutes? Oh yeah. The wait info is something I'll explain to you. Going really deep into SQL Server, but I'll explain it in like a picture. But it says page latch. Now page latch, wait 5 minutes, thank you. Page latch just means, hey, these 8K pages, you're trying to insert something, and to be able to do that, it needs to be locked. And SQL Server locks it, and you insert your data, and you release it again. But apparently, we're inserting into the same place, so we're having page latch problems. This is a design issue. So if you look at this, and your manager goes, shall we give the thing a bit more memory? No need. This is not memory related, right? Adding more memory to a SQL Server it's like going to the doctor in most. You go to a doctor with a broken arm, the bone's sticking out, and he gives you a flu shot because that's what most people have. Let's start with that, right? And then investigate. Oh, you have a broken arm. Okay. Look at these things. And now, how do these weight statistics work? This is a thing, and I have a few minutes to explain that. This is a secret of most well-paid freelance SQL Server guys. You have a problem with your SQL Server, and then this guy comes in and does magic, looks at weight statistics, finds out exactly what is wrong with your SQL Server, and takes the right solution. And you're thinking, how does he know that? That's because we don't know that. SQL Server does, and they tell us. Let me show you. The last 3 minutes of this thing. What happened? Went to the first one. Okay, need to go. Oh yeah, here we go. Let's talk about a little bit of internals in SQL Server. Just a little bit. When you start SQL Server, it looks at how many CPUs you have, and it makes a thread from the application for each CPU. It does not let Windows handle the thread management. SQL Server does that. It has something called a SQL OS. SQL Server manages all the processes inside SQL Server and decides what gets to run on the thread. Now, you have a query. You run something, or your application runs a query. SQL Server gives it a spot on the CPU. Here you go. I have free CPU. Run your query. That's here. It's running, right? It gets 4 milliseconds. If it's done inside the 4 milliseconds, it's done. It disappears. If it can't be done in 4 milliseconds because it needs to grab something that's not in memory but has to come from disk, it has to wait. SQL Server won't let it be on the CPU waiting, because then a few of these processes would block your whole system. So it will take this process off the CPU and put it in a suspended mode on the wait queue. This is on the wait queue. And it gives it a status. And the status is this wait status. It says for something that has to come from disk, page IO latch. You want to grab something that's in memory, but it's not in memory. You have to wait for the IO. So I'm giving you a status that you're waiting for IO, page IO latch. And then when it's done, when the resource is there, SQL Server will move the query from suspended to runnable. This is the runnable list. This is basically waiting for the CPU to be available again, because there's others running on the CPU in the meantime. So this is how it goes round and round until it's done and then disappears. And these are called wait statistics, and you can see them with SP who is active. SP Blitz will tell you as well. There is an SP Ask Brent in there that also talks about wait statistics. And there's a few that are important. 1 minute. Okay, let's see if we can do this. If it's everything that says IO, write log, page IO latch, means you have an IO problem. If the most of your waits are IO, then don't stick memory in the box. It's IO based, right? There's another one that can be very important. Scheduler yield. This means you had all your resources, but you ran out of your 4 milliseconds. So I'm going to put you straight from running to runnable. You're not waiting on anything. I'm just going to put you back here. you just used up your 4 milliseconds. If you see a lot of those, add CPU, because you don't have enough CPU probably. Or tune your application if you can, make more CPU available. And then there's there's one more, if I can remember that thing. There's one, oh yeah, network, async network I/O. Don't let the developers tell you this is a network problem. This is their application processing the data too slowly, and SQL Server is ready, but the application just says, hey, come on, take my data, come on. So if you see async network I/O, your SQL Server can keep up fine. It's not slow. Don't give it more memory. Don't give it more disk. Don't give it a bigger VM. Just tell the developers to fix their application.